Everyone, welcome back to Kingdom Speak. We're about to start an episode with a very special guest, and we're going to talk about process. So why not join us today? Isn't that a great intro, guys?
Yeah.
Welcome to Kingdom Speak with Pastor Daniel McKillop.
One of your better
and
ones.
evangelist Nathaniel Harris. Trying to get this card in the shot, and the producer is unable to
Hey, that
move
was one
the
of my
cameras.
birthday cards.
And anyways, I just thought we'd put this on here. Like, we're taking credit for this one. Like,
Yeah,
you don't get to keep this for you. This is
Bruh.
this is us.
This is like celebrating your birthday twice.
Yeah. Did we mention you had a birthday?
Oh, whatever.
Did you know that?
I had people come up to me last
Rev?
week that heard that, and they said,
I
"Man,
had
you,
no
what are
idea.
you? You don't look a day over 32."
Oh, they're just saying
They're
that.
full-
Yeah, right.
They are
Come
full
on.
of
Oreo cookies.
the devil.
They wanted a Kingdom Speak mug.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. They're just maneuvering, I might say. Yeah. Let's just call them people out right now. Anyways, we got this cool little Kingdom Speak card, and they put a Canadian flag. And you said it was from missionaries?
It's from the Reeves,
From
right?
the Reeves family?
I believe so.
Is it?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Really
That's
cool.
awesome.
So thank you guys for that. That's amazing. Yeah. That's cool. So much stuff. There's no cookies this week. I'm really disappointed. So I did bring a package of Oreos just to
Did you really?
pacify myself. So
Hey, I tell you what I did. I ordered some more cookies from Unto the Hills.
Oh, okay.
you
How
ordered? Oh, well, good.
No, for
when,
you
when will they
guys.
be
When
here?
did you- No.
What did you order me?
None of your business. Oh. No, it's for Valentine's week. Hello?
Yeah, well, we're there.
Hello?
We're there.
Did we say under the hill?
Unto. Is it? It's
Oh,
unto the
I
Hills.
thought we really don't want to be under the hill.
No,
Like, if cookies are going to take you there, this is not a good advertisement.
That's right. That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, no. No, I support the people that invest in the Kingdom Speak. Mm-hmm. What?
Now who's maneuvering?
It's not a matter of maneuvering. They already gave us cookies, and now we're buying some.
That's great. That's great. And those
I
cookies.
just
were-
felt conviction come this way. I just felt
Yes,
conviction as
yes.
he's speaking.
That's that evangelist gift kicking in you got going there. Hey, we can have an altar call here.
thought this was cool. It's good to know when there's converts in the audience. Converts. So this one says, the review says, sold. I have never been a podcast person, nor a person that listened to preaching. But Kingdom Speak, Kingdom Speak has been a great blessing. Keep up the great work. And that is from Randall Manley on Apple Podcast USA. So we will say amen to Randall.
Can I get an amen? Amen. Can I get a hallelujah?
We should promote our daily greetings to the producer, and we need to start calling him Randall.
Producer Randall.
Producer Randall.
That's a nice ring to it.
Very manly.
Let's go. Randall to you, sir.
He's acting like it don't bother him, but
Yeah.
trust me, he's
Yeah, he don't-
bristling right now. Oh, no. Anyway.
What would Brian Regan's version be? Randolphelson. Something like that, wouldn't it be? Some kind of a twist on that. So,
Why don't we jump into the episode and then remind me, and we'll talk about this in a couple minutes.
Okay,
You wanna
so
do
we
that?
have an ad that you wanna stick
we're
around and hear.
We need to talk about what's going on with some of our friends, but let's do that a bit later. I just feel like it's time.
you feel like
Yeah,
it's time
it's
to just
time.
move into this part of
We've
the
had
service.
enough preliminaries. Yeah, we need to
We're
just
gonna-
get into this.
We're going to change the order of the service.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
you know what's a blessing is I've been looking at Derek, and I didn't realize I could switch over and see the rest of you. So it's so nice to meet the rest of you. This is
look
awesome.
at that.
He was trying to hijack your whole experience here. This is about
Yeah.
me, my, I.
What a blessing.
Yeah. Man, we're just pumped to have you on the show with us today. So for our guest, this is it Pastor
Bishop.
Elder. He's gonna
Doctor.
He's gonna talk to us about bishops, I think,
Doctor?
later.
Oh, was he? Yeah, show us your shirt. Yeah, you know you had a shirt. Yeah.
Free merch for Kingdom Speak. I want to be a sponsor. I want to bless the kingdom.
Okay. Yeah. To our
Yes, you
audience,
do.
there's a little pre-show storytelling that went on that didn't make the cut, but it was good. And if you treat us real right and send us enough direct messages, maybe we'll share it with you. But we are glad to have evangelist Nathaniel Harris with us on Kingdom Speak.
I'm into that.
Hey, it's good to be here.
So it's hard to tell where an evangelist is from because they're all over the place. So where are you joining us from today?
I am joining from Silsbee, Texas today.
Awesome.
And the current weather?
Current weather is, I don't know, about 65, 70 with large mosquitoes knocking at the door. It's pretty awesome.
Praise God.
Large mosquitoes knocking at the door. Okay, you said it. So the other morning, I'm going to say maybe 2 weeks ago, and we have had an incredible winter.
Thank God. Yes.
By
it's been
Canadian
good.
standards, but it's been good.
It's been good.
Very, very mild. Very, very little snow. So it's been good. But the other morning, it was like hunkered down by the fire cold. Like it was that cold. And so I went up to our new church site, and one of our contractors that's helping us, Brother Dennis Edgar, I said, "How are you this morning?" He said, I'd give $25 for a mosquito bite right now.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good, ain't it?
That's pretty good. Yeah.
So that lets you know how Canadians rate the season that they're in.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be fair, this is actually good weather for Texas,
Okay, well, that's
for all my
good.
Texans.
Hey, we really do appreciate you coming on, though, today, Brother Harris. We value your ministry, your friendship, and we're just looking forward to having a good discussion today. And I know that you had to fit us into your schedule, but thank you for doing so.
Hey, glad to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So we've got approximately 60 seconds into our pre-show prep here. So this is a very structured conversation.
Yes.
But one of the things that we chatted about, and I said, let's do that, is the role that process plays in ministry, and I think there's broader application than just for ministry. So why don't you set that conversation up for us this morning? Everything's not instantaneous. I mean, your ministry didn't just like jump out of the closet and grab you and say, "Ha ha, here it is."
It did, but it was scary. And,
Okay.
No, I think ministry is a process, and I think for the younger minister especially, they are looking at the achievements of even some of their peers, some of men that are within reach, and then elders, and they are trying to figure out how to get to that level, to that esteemed. And I don't think it's all, for the record, I don't think it's bad.
Sure.
I think a lot of times we put emphasis on young preachers. Like, you shouldn't feel that. Well, if a preacher doesn't have ambition to do something for God, he's not going to be a preacher.
Yes.
He's not going to make it very long with
Yes.
godly ambition. I'm trying to make an emphasis there.
Yes.
Obviously, if he's in it for himself and for self-promotion, we've got problems anyways. But I think it's good for every young preacher to have ambition.
Well, it
I
kind of
think
goes, if I could just jump in here, it kind of goes like I heard one elder say this, I'd rather have to put a set of brakes on someone than build a fire under them.
Yes.
So ambitionless
Absolutely.
people are not the movers and shakers in the kingdom. But it does have to be righteous
Yeah, has to be righteous, and I think sometimes those lines can get blurred. I think sometimes
Well said.
the young guy who has good ambition sometimes sees things that attract him into ministry that could blur the lines that he had started with good ambition, but then sees the blessing of ministry and somehow gets maybe off kilter.
Yeah. Very
I think
good.
that happens
Very
to good guys. I think the story that always played a part for me was David. And we talk about killing the bear and the lion and Goliath. But to me, I think that what stood out was the Bible says that when David, when he goes to his brothers, that he leaves the sheep with the keeper. And then the Bible says when he takes the cheese cart to his brothers before he can go to battle, he leaves the cheese cart with the keeper. And so at every level that David was at, I mean, he had to become so inebriated, careful. I don't know what the correct word is there with the position he was in before he could go to the next level, that David never transferred to the next level until he had handed off what he had been doing to somebody
good.
else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can never be replaced, never be promoted until you can be replaced.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And especially in your local church, because a lot of guys, I mean, all of us start out in our local church in whatever form of ministry we're in. And I think sometimes the excitement of doing something for God is always more exciting in a different zip code. or maybe a continent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely right.
And there is excitement that comes with that. Again, I'm trying to look at the positive here. There's also negative things again that you could, but there is excitement. But if you just hightail it out of your church and leave your local assembly, also, what have you really done?
Right.
And I think that's part of a process of both building the minister and integrity. Is no matter what level you're at, you have to be able to turn that and hand that to somebody else. Even for you to go to the next level, you should be developing someone to take your spot.
Yeah.
While you're in process, someone's also in process behind you.
But that absolutely eliminates the any space for insecurity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you want to go up the ladder, speaking even corporately, but I use that term, if you want to excel and exceed, you really can't be insecure.
No. And of course there's a difference between, people being arrogant and being secure.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's another thing that young ministers that I hear often are trying to figure that out because they see both
trying to figure
in ministry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if I could say this here, I mean, I'm 45 years old. I can say whatever I want to say now.
Yeah, bless God. Got my own podcast.
This is a safe place.
Yeah. Now he's stealing our thunder.
He's heard it.
If you read...
I'm turning the safe music on.
He's turning the safe space music on. Okay, good. All right.
There we go.
I'm feeling
Incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm losing my train of thought.
Yeah, I'm getting sleepy over here.
It's working.
So let me put this out as a precursor to what I'm fixing to say. I understand that I'm not Paul and I'm not John and I've never been boiled alive and all these things. I get that. So, but when I read stuff like Elijah, for example, he said, it's not going to rain for 3.5 years. And at my word, it'll start raining again. He didn't say, and when God says that it will start raining again, he doesn't say, when God speaks to me and I tell you what God said, he said, no, at my word. I'm not even sure how I would respond to that in this day and age. I would probably call him a bit arrogant. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean at your word? You actually think you can shut up the heavens? But he did.
It's pretty successful.
Yeah. Exactly. So, I mean, I'm not, to your point, I'm not promoting arrogance, but I think even
Right.
amongst the hearer or the observer of that ministry, we have to make sure we don't conflate confidence with arrogance. Just like the individual man of God that's being used has to make sure he doesn't cross the line into arrogance. So doesn't the audience have to make sure they don't confuse confidence with
That's right. That's right.
with arrogance.
And I think to Brother Derek's point, I think if you go through process, you understand your self-worth.
Yes.
If you go through process, gentlemen, I'm coming back. I feel like I lost you.
Okay.
But if you go through process, you can get through all that and not lose your self-worth because you put the time in. You've got corn in the crib.
Yep.
You know what it takes.
Right. Right. So to abort process would really almost set you up to cross that line that you're talking about into arrogance. Because if you had immediate access to all of the dimensions to be able, in the case of an Elijah, shut the heavens up without going through everything that Elijah went through.
Absolutely. And even traveling, I've been, let's see, January is now 10 years of traveling full time.
Wow.
And I would ask, especially the first few years, I'd ask guys, man, what's the biggest issue you had with a young evangelist or a young preacher coming through? And I stopped asking that because I was afraid they were going to start giving me too much advice. But no.
It was more
and,
of an
but
icebreaker. You really didn't want an answer.
Yeah, I really didn't want to hear what they had to say. But one of their main things were they would talk about guys that had no life experience but were good in the pulpit. And they would also talk about guys that and no names particularly. I don't remember any names forgiven, but they were just talking about guys that with no life experience and no convert or making convert experience.
Very good.
And all that translates into the pulpit, which is process. Because when you sat in the living room and taught a Bible study while the TV's blaring and music's blaring over here, and their kids are running around and they're dying for their.
Is this your living room that you're talking about, or
my wife's?
Hopefully she doesn't listen
She's
to
still
Kingdom
seeking.
Speak.
Yeah, she's listened to some other podcasts. Don't worry.
We're not going to talk about that podcast today.
no, but
No,
you're
no.
right. You're right. Sitting there in that hubbub and confusion and teaching a Bible study.
That's right.
You learn compassion for people. And so when you're doing that as a young preacher, I mean, this is, our pastor taught us that in fact, he wouldn't let us preach if we were not teaching Bible studies. I mean, this concept we preach, we need to teach Bible studies. Well, in our church, if you were not teaching a Bible study, you didn't touch the mic.
Oh, that's good.
That's almost one of those bomb things. I don't know what you call that, but if I could hit it right.
Yeah, go ahead. Come on, man.
Oh,
Give him
okay.
one of those.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. He gets stingy.
But that's how it was. Yeah, I see that. But that's how it was growing up in our home church. Is that Bible studies were essential, and while obviously you needed to do it for the kingdom and all those things, it also was part of the process. There were things that were being put in us. When I got in the pulpit after that, and I looked out there and seen some of my own, if I could put it that way, babies that we had won.
Sure.
You're a little. It's not that you water down anything, but your compassion of how you display. You're not as one-liner-ish when you've never won somebody. It's easy to whip somebody else's kids. When I had my own kids, I say this preaching, but before we traveled and we traveled for 7 years and married for 10 years with no children. And I used to laugh. I would tell them, listen, I love to whip people's kids. My dad lied all my life. He said, it hurts me more than it hurts you. I said, he lied. Bring your kids up and I'll whoop them. And I would tell them this as being funny. I said, because I've never had any. And so what happens sometimes in process is when you don't have your own children. You've never produced offspring or discipleship. Well, it's easy for you to whip up on somebody else's saints.
Yes. Yes.
But once you've cultivated your own and you got babies there and you know how vital they're hanging on to every message and every word, they have new convertisms.
Yep.
You take that gospel a little bit more careful.
Yes.
And that's all part, to me, that's all part of process that the young guy sometimes doesn't see that is cultivating something in him. It's part of process.
Wow, that is so good. That is so good. So it really kind of alters, if I'm grasping the context of what you're saying, it alters maybe not so much what you say, but it alters how you say what you say. It's adjusting the motivation behind. I think there's a reason why the biblical precedent is that we communicate truth in love. I think there's a reason why he adds that in there.
And he really knew what he was talking about.
He seemed to, didn't he? Yeah. Yeah. So do you see this playing even into the life of Jesus? You know, as you're talking, I'm seeing this through the lens of that wilderness temptation.
Sure, yeah.
Part of that satanic ploy is to offer you all the kingdoms of this world without the process of a Calvary.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a dangerous place to a young preacher and a vital place. I can give experience, be careful, but I can give an experience of when I was searching for the will of God for my life. You know, I was feeling, was in the woes of praying for full-time ministry, did not know it was evangelizing, but just felt it was full-time ministry. And in that process of praying, if I could put it in your words there, kingdoms were offered, but without process.
Oh, that's good.
And they didn't go through proper process to be offered.
Well, then there's that too.
And then there's that.
Well,
but as the 23-year-old, or at that point I think I was 27. This whole process is going through. I'm 27 some years old, and I'm praying for direction. And this avenue comes, but because of process, I knew it wasn't right.
That is so good.
And kingdoms were being offered, and I mean, at that time, what was being offered was, I mean, it sounded pretty good.
Yes.
But it would have aborted what God ultimately had for my life if I would have taken the kingdoms of this world, and I know this was not a worldly deal, but the way it was coming across, it was an aborting process. And I think the process of going through some of the things we had went through had already prepared us. Even though that sounded alluring, it also sounded like it was a aborting process because of all the stuff we had went through. Had that been offered before process, boy, I might have jumped into it, you know, with being naive and deceived. But because of some of the process, talking about the corn in the crib, it does make you a little bit more, no, we put some time into this. Like, you know, this isn't a half-baked idea. There's prayer, there's tears, there's Bible studies, and whatever that next level is, we feel like it's got to happen, you know, vertically, not horizontally.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this then, Brother Harris. So you're 10 years in now, full-time, I think is what you mentioned. So
yes, sir.
Do you feel that the process is done now? You know, is there a point where the process stops?
Boy, I wish there was. No, and that's the funny thing. You know, again, to the guy that's looking up, you know, everything seems like it has an expiration date or it has an ending, but absolutely not. At every level of ministry, there seems to be another process. there's things that I've had to go through in the last couple of years that I've asked my wife, I'm like, what in the world? Just personal things that I thought when you get done with it, you're like, oh, I guess I needed that worked out of me, or
Right.
or another process that God must be preparing me for something or whatnot. Maybe another level of ministry or another area of things to deal with in ministry. From a public standpoint, a platform or whatnot.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but no, it never stops. I mean, has it stopped for you?
No, it hasn't. But the reason I'm asking that question
Yeah.
is to let somebody, as you've just said, that's looking up at ministry from a more infantile standpoint, ministry speaking. You can assume that once certain platforms are attained, that destinations have been arrived at.
Sure.
Right? And I think you see this in the life of David, okay? So David is a shepherd. Then David becomes this quasi soldier, giant killing, Then he becomes king. Then he goes into a season where he's not allowed to kill giants. So it's like, and I mean, we're skipping over a number of seasons in his life.
Sure.
The point being that he had to almost reinvent himself over and over and over and over again. And so there's nothing static about the pursuit of being involved in the kingdom. You are always having to reinvent, not out of selfish ambition, but out of pursuit and loyalty to the process. That, all right, I'm done keeping the sheep. I'm now moving into killing giants. And you already tapped into this a few moments ago. And I understand that we honor David for going backwards after he was anointed and going back and keeping sheep. So
Sure.
humble, and that's a season, that's a process, but he never stayed there.
No,
You know,
no,
you never kill a Goliath there. You still have to move on. So, but I think it's lost on us that it doesn't matter if you're at the season in David's ministry, that you used to kill giants, but now someone's looking at you saying, "We got that." And if you die, the light goes out in Israel. So it's best if you stay home. Huh? What do you mean stay home? I was the original giant killer here. So it's process over and over and over again. And I don't think that anybody stops. If they do, you don't want to hear them preach. You don't want them to be your pastor. You don't want them to be the evangelist that you bring in, because they become a static echo chamber, and they. So that's my opinion on it. That was not a gotcha question. That is, I think it's important
I agree.
that everybody understands this process thing is cyclical in nature, and it just keeps repeating over and over and over again.
Absolutely. And then I'm sure you guys have covered some of this in other conversations, but then you look at a guy's ministry on a national platform or a local platform. He's preaching in a local church or a guest preacher, and you're looking at the end result of one process.
Yeah.
And you don't see. I mean, even now, I've got, by the last 3 years we've been flying in and out, but for 7 years we pulled a trailer, and we started with a hoopty, and we left black water in many churches. Thank God for their mercy and kindness. The trailers broke down and caught fire, and in one revival it was negative 18 degrees or somewhere in that vicinity in Indiana. It was super cold, and they said, "Hey, why don't you put hay bales around your trailer?" And so we stacked hay bales around, which worked, and then we put a heater underneath, which was really brilliant, a bullet heater. And nothing caught fire there, but when the snow starts melting, it smells like Noah's Ark inside the trailer. And so those are processes that, when you're now 10 years in, and you were honored, somebody flew you in to preach, and you're there, and they don't see that. they have no idea of the processes that have taken you to where you are.
Yeah.
They don't know the first truck you drove, and my first trailer was $2,000, and it was a hoopty. I actually think offerings were better. I need to go back to that. I God, but
Yeah.
I think people felt sorry for us.
Yeah.
But those are processes that sometimes the young guy doesn't see in ministry. And I know we say that with pastors. There's young guys looking at pastor and what he's driving, wearing. There's a lot that goes into that. I mean, a whole lot that goes into that. A whole lot.
Wow. So you've already spoken to a couple of these, and you've quickly just glossed over, and we've chuckled at it. But I think it's important that we understand we're making light of the process, not making light speaking down to it. But you're at a point now where your view of process in the rear view mirror is different, maybe even than when it was in the windshield. As you're
100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, even with locally, and I've tried to tell young guys this if they've asked younger guys. I'm not the elder, but now you got a lot of guys in their 20s that are going out. I'm almost 40. Like Bishop with us, young preachers. I mean, he would say things like, "Hey, preach hope, preach faith, don't pastor my people," and he'd leave out of town and give us the pulpit. And then would come back, and there was some reprimanding at times. I thought I said, "Don't pastor my people," I'm going to give all of his Buxton boot camp secrets, but
Buxton boot camp secrets.
we call it Buxton boot camp. But there were many things that he did, and while you were going through it, didn't always feel good in the process.
Yes. No chastisement for the
and
president.
So. Oh yeah. And there was things that he would do subliminally that you wouldn't know unless later on in the process you're like, oh man, that's why he did that. Yes. But what you would realize is when you got out of the local assembly and you went to preach somewhere, well, you always meet yourself at different processes. This is what I've come to learn. I've met myself many times that were at different processes of life. And I see men that they either didn't go through the process or they just starting it. And I'm like, or you hear somebody get up in the pulpit, as this is for the young guy in particular, you hear him get up and you're like, oh, that's what the bishop was trying to beat out of me.
Yeah.
And you all of a sudden you think, oh, thank God for process. Now, you didn't thank God for it while you were going through it. You hated it.
Of course.
I mean, you were upset. I mean, they ripped me for everything, from my clothes to my hair. I mean, all of it. And I needed it. I needed it. And I say that respectfully. I love and appreciate my bishop. But I need it because they were trying to make a man of God, a preacher, and not just, they seen something in me in the process.
Well, this has been something that I've often, because I mean, I assisted my dad from 2002. So we assisted, and then it kind of moved into a bit of co-pastoring. But don't let that be lost on you. He was still he still had both hands on the steering wheel. So it
and probably the checkbook.
You better believe it. Yes, sir. So working through that quote unquote process, it was my own, to borrow your expression, Buxton boot camp experience. But this is what I've, in retrospect, looking at this, at that season in my life, there is no way I could stand up under what God has called me to bear without the strength that was instilled in me in the process that I was willing to submit to.
100%.
It enabled me to bear up under the weight of what God has called me to do. It would have crushed me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And how many ministries do you think are ruined because of that?
Well, I think you see them fizzle out. I mean, I think we've seen it. I remember a guy. I remember a guy that was probably in the same time frame that, man, he just. I was telling a young man the other day. I'm sure you have. It was probably your testimony that you could just get up in the mic and just thunder the first time you touched it.
Oh yes, absolutely.
But I had friends that
The only way they could keep me from like taking over is they had to give me like a Radio Shack mic so that it kind of.
Yeah.
Oh,
Fizzled
absolutely.
out.
Yeah, we only got every third word. That was the only thing that kept it.
Yeah.
Don't know what he's saying, but it's loud.
He looks excited.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty good. Mm-hmm.
But you know how there are guys. I had friends that literally would get in that mic, and it's like, and I mean this complimentary. They could. It's like they owned it. Like, I mean, they just had a good flow, good presence in the microphone. They were a natural, I think was the term we would use.
Sure.
And I remember calling my father as a young preacher. And I'm like, man, I'm choking up here. I am like, I mean, I'm confident outside the pulpit. I'm insecure in the pulpit,
Right.
And my dad, he would just say, hey, you focus on studying the word. You focus on you. Don't, just the things we all say, don't compare yourself among yourself. And I can say today that, I mean, some of those guys are not even in truth today. They shot to the top, but they didn't last. And to your point, there was nothing in the process of their stability in their walk with God, their ministry, their character in some regards. And that's not for everybody, but in some of these regards, they shot to the top. And then when the pressure was put on them because of no process, it crushed them. And the reason you could do what you just referenced was because there was process before the pressure came.
Yes.
Because there's pressures in ministry, but there's different pressures at different levels.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So really, aborting the process is limiting how high you can go and how far you can go. If we look at, I think, a real-to-life biblical example is Joseph. Like if Joseph's dream would have went from dream to fulfillment, pow, Joseph would have been an ignoramus to live with. He'd have been too dead. But after all that he'd been through, instead of standing over top of his brethren, taunting them and rubbing their faces in the dirt, he turns and weeps. I mean, when the dream fully came full circle to after everything that he had been through, he was broken enough to be able to handle the fulfillment of the dream without it destroying him.
Absolutely. And I think this is not original to me, but if you think about the Bible says that all Egypt had to go through Joseph's hands to eat, to get corn and meal.
Yes.
All of Egypt. So you just think about it. Again, wasn't original to me, but it was in a conversation. That means that Potiphar and Potiphar's wife most likely had to walk through that same line. So not only did he give his brethren, but the compassion we've talked about in the process, he also had to turn around and feed Potiphar and Potiphar's wife, most likely. And somehow that compassion has translated every person got fed that, and because of the process, I believe it was because he could have just slaughtered her, said absolutely not, and I think they would have recorded it. That would have been a pretty good story to talk about. But because of process, the compassion comes back out, and I think it's important. It's vital.
So, do you
Hey,
think?
just a second.
Oh,
You guys are getting deep here, and I need to hold up for a second.
you want to abort the process, don't
That's
you?
right. That's right. Yeah. So part of the process of
Make a
kingdom
good saint.
You make a good saying.
My God.
Yes.
Part of the process of kingdom speak is to talk about things happening that our friends want us to talk about. One of those is preserving the Christian family. So you've heard us talk about these individuals
yes.
before.
Yes.
These are apostolics, and they're running a nonprofit called Preserving the Christian Family. And they
Dr.
want...
Dean Anderson.
That's
and
right. And
Karen.
his wife, Karen Anderson.
Yes.
So this month, on February 29th, they're hosting someone that they wanted us to help spread the word, just to try to get some traction, because they're not sure if anyone will pay attention or not.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's-
okay.
Okay.
So it's
Sure,
one of
let's
their
help 'em out.
It's one of
Okay.
their events where they're not,
yeah.
they're just trying to get this off the ground,
So
right?
is this one of those young guys that we
Well,
were just talking about?
I
One of those
don't-
young ministers?
I don't really know, but I'm just saying they're trying to help people out here.
Okay.
So they wanted us to lend a hand
Oh, really? So they want us to name drop a bit.
and name drop. So February 29th, Preserving the Christian Family is hosting Nathaniel Urshan.
Who is it again?
Nathaniel
Is it-
Urshan. Am I saying that right? Urshan.
No, but
Urshan?
does he go by Nate or Nathaniel?
I'm not sure. They didn't give that any more information there, but
I'm sure I've heard.
the name rings a
of him
bell, does it
before.
not?
Does he have a podcast?
I'm not sure.
Oh.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to use that word on this channel?
Anyway, February 29th. So, yeah, of course we're joking.
Woo!
But we think it's pretty important to let our audience know that Preserving the Christian Family is hosting Pastor Urshan. And he's going to be talking about apostolic life and leadership.
Oh, wow.
So how about that? So producer Randall, if we wanted to sign up,
No, this is more about apostolic ministry is what he's going to be. So this is why Randall needs to be paying attention,
Okay.
isn't it?
that's right. Part of the apostolic life and leadership series
Series.
is apostolic ministry.
Yeah,
Yes.
so-
Thank you for that.
Pastor Urshan is going to be talking about apostolic ministry. You need to bring yours on and listen.
So if we wanted to
Randall.
sign up, is there a way? Are you familiar with how we could sign up,
Yeah,
producer Randall? Why don't you share with our audience what they
Yeah,
should
so
do?
you really need to listen closely because I'm going to say this really fast, but you need to go to www.preservingthechristianfamily.com/services to book your class. All
There
right.
it is. There
You've
it
got
is.
it. I'm only saying it once. You can go back and listen to it again if you missed it.
You
okay?
you sound like, for not having kids, you sound like a mom and dad right there. I'm
very,
not
very
telling
good.
you again.
You're going to have to rewind the tape because we're not repeating it.
I am not
Or else.
telling you again.
Yeah.
And then they have a series in March with Karen Anderson called The Emotionally Healthy Apostolic Woman. That series kicks off in March. So how about that?
Awesome.
Can't wait to join that class.
So check out Preserving the Christian
If
Family.
you're not sure you have an apostolic ministry, Randy, maybe you can join the
women's class. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Check them out. Great source for the apostolic movement.
Amen. Amen. So sorry to interrupt there, but it's part of our process on the show. What can I say? Part of the process.
Yeah.
Just before we
If
get
you don't like it, go listen to some other podcast. Amen. How about that? I said what I said.
wow.
That escalated.
Wow. Give us some more about the Kill Up Sunday mornings.
Yes.
It's the only one I can recall very quickly. Start your own church. Yeah.
All right, Randy.
Where were we?
Where
man?
was
Get
you
us
going,
back on
Randy?
track, man.
Randy was chiming in.
I just have a question here for our bishop potentate guest.
Oh,
All I'm supposed to say
here we go.
is moto moto. Just wanting to know if you know anything about this.
You know,
I feel like
I
the
don't watch
spirit's moving
movies
right now.
or television, and so I don't know where this come from.
Okay.
But I have
Okay.
heard and seen thereof. But I've really been praying for the culprits. I mean, they really need to pray and seek the face of God.
Man, whoever the
So,
culprits are.
this was more in like slander and defamation, that kind of thing, or
Yeah, you know, it blessed me.
Okay.
I laughed pretty hard, actually. So, yeah,
Okay.
you know,
There's a
when
good
you
story
say
there
something in the
somewhere.
pulpit nowadays, when you say something in the pulpit nowadays, you become infamous or famous for it. And
Okay.
so
this was a famous one for you.
this was a famous moment. By
Okay.
the way, that clip was it was mixed up with several other messages. it wasn't one long gaff. It was actually several. So just for the blessing.
You do several. Okay.
I already know who
Yeah,
this
yeah.
come from without even knowing the story. Hearing you talk about it, I can connect the dots.
I haven't even seen it. I was just told to say moto.
Oh my goodness! Hey, listen, this is the funny thing. So I'm getting picked up from the airport this week by a preacher's son-in-law. Anyways, and he said I text Dad and father-in-law and said, I don't think I've seen Brother Harris. And then he said, "Wait, is he the moto guy?"
Oh.
I honestly
So he
don't know what
referred
this
to
is.
the-
What do we? Yeah.
We'll have to.
Yeah, I don't know if you.
I'll show you after the show.
Okay.
Yeah, after it's live, we should have a laugh.
Okay.
That's pretty good. I mean, it went viral. What can I say?
Hey.
You can't say anything anymore without it being recorded.
Oh, man.
Exactly.
Nothing
Right.
wrong with it. Great. Good stuff. Good stuff.
So the question that I was going to ask before we went all preserving the Christian family on you was, is it possible, and again, this seems like an obvious question, but I think it's important that we ask it so that we can talk about the answer. Is it possible, and how do we tap into the ability to enjoy the process rather than despising it while waiting on the destination to arrive?
Yeah, it's possible. It is possible. It takes it. To me, for that to be possible, you really have to come to a soul conclusion that I'm going to go through it, and that you see the end result is ahead of you, and it's worth the process. But yeah, that's a great question. I think you have to make up your mind to enjoy it at whatever process you're in, and they're not all comfortable.
Sure.
But I think if you're looking ahead and you feel like, it's like two different ministries. Like it's like David's ministry is like he walks through a door opens, he walks through it, he's content until the next door opens. Almost all the time we see
Yes.
David's life.
Yep.
Whereas Joseph's get a dream. He's got a linear view of where he's headed the whole time, even though he's got prison doors he has to walk through and pits and so I think there's almost two different types of ministries, as I've probably heard it said. There's Davids that are content till the next door opens, and then there's men that are driven by, they've got some type of directive as a vision, dream. They can see long term. For me, I was probably more, and there's nothing, I don't think either one of them's right or wrong. I think they're just two aspects of ministry. I think for me, I probably got more in the David deal where I learned, I didn't like it all the time, but I tried to learn to be content. Even now, I'm just kind of like, till the next door opens. Versus,
Sure.
I've met other men that, let's say, are evangelizing. Let's say they're not evangelizing, but they, before even going into that, they do down the road, this is what God's told me I'm going to do. And so they were driven by that. And I think both aspects, you have to learn how to cultivate in whatever process you're in and enjoy it and try not to get too frustrated. And something else, would you like to answer that point as well before we move?
No. I think that okay. If there's anything that I would add to this is, I think Jesus even he seems to be a good example to follow. He had to put joy before him to endure the cross. So the process still demanded that he offset. And so I think it's important that we develop that rather than just grit our teeth through the whole thing. I think there's got to be that process of celebrating the process all along.
Yeah, and I don't think he hated being a carpenter. I mean,
Well,
we
great
talk about
point.
the spirit. We talk about the spiritual side of when he goes does his earthly ministry. Of course, guys can relate with that, but I don't think he hated being a carpenter. I think he
That's a
enjoyed
great
everything he
point.
worked on.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think
Well, there's nothing
he
recorded
enjoyed
of him saying negatively about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and think about where he connected. We talk about he was tempted at all times, like man, but he was also connected at all points in that he worked. He knew what it's like to have a job. There's a big word. He knew what it's like to.
Ooh, the JOB
He knew what it's
word.
like to work for people that he didn't like,
Yeah.
possibly,
Yeah.
that demanded him to be done before he was ready. I mean, you just think about the things that he learned in the carpentership, the human aspect of that we rush past, like, oh, he was a carpenter, and then he was earthly ministry.
Yeah.
There's a lot of going on in that carpenter shed, for 30 years or upward of 30 years of his
That's a
life.
great point. That's a great point. Absolutely.
That he had to endure. I think what I was going to say, I feel like
No,
you
that's
got
good.
something good
No,
right
sir.
there.
That's good.
I think what I was going to say is I hear this a lot and see it to an extent, is sometimes there are young men that get pushed to the top.
Okay.
And I'm trying to be careful because they're not bad men. They're good men.
Sure.
And maybe even there's connectivity with father-in-law, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, however. They're connected to someone good in ministry that has a great record, acumen, all those things.
Yep.
I think sometimes for the guys that don't have that, when they see that elevation there, they feel like it's unattainable. That's a real thing to talk about because
Yes, it is.
Because not everybody's going to marry into a dynasty family, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean,
Sure.
not everybody's going to have those connections. So the only thing we're going back to the point here. The only thing that can separate a guy is process. And I knew, like in my life, my dad's a pastor, but nobody really knows who my father is. My bishop is, we got there when I was 19, and my dad went to the church after that. But I stayed with Brother Buxton. Brother Buxton, and he would tell you this, it's not a secret. He did not call one person to have me preach for him. In fact, I think he called God and said, "Don't have Brother Harrison. Let's see if God's in it." And so I had to, and again, when I say the Lord has opened up every door, but I didn't have any, and many guys didn't. Many guys on the field didn't. We've had this conversation that we didn't have a hand up. The only thing that separated us was process. And that's when you start understanding your own worth, or at least having an understanding of, okay, God's got a purpose. There's guys that even now, I told an evangelist the other day, I said, man, I feel like I'm a dinosaur, and I'm not old, but I'm saying on the field, now you got these new models that have, Apple CarPlay, and they've got, satellite radio, and I'm still like tape deck and I'm like the dinosaur evangelist, and I'm not. I'm just being funny. But a lot of these guys, they sing and they got all these things. But it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing added to their gift. But I understand, and other guys, they know their worth because they have. When I say that, I mean that respectfully, not arrogantly. Is they just put the time in. They've seen the results and they've processed. But I think that should be talked about. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. When guys, specifically about seeing other young men, this is a conversation happens a lot, that seemingly abort the process because of who they're connected to, and they get pushed up. What was
that is a massive topic that you've just kicked the door open on right there. So, I mean, this is the role of nepotism. This is the role of monarchy in the kingdom, and there's two edges to everything that we're dropping here right now. Okay, so I'm coming from the accusation could be leveled at me that I'm coming from more of a, to use your word, dynasty background.
Fair enough, yeah.
I'm pastoring the church that my dad pastored, that my uncle pastored. So I know what it's like to come up under the shadow of that, where the perception can be that the reason that I'm pastoring the church is because my dad gave it to me.
Yep.
Okay? So then you've got the side that you've just raised, which is equally and maybe even more so intimidating, that you don't have that. I don't know. I think it's 6 hands in one hand and a half a dozen in the other. To today's discussion, it's process that levels the playing field.
Yes.
It's process that levels it. I don't care if my dad let me use it now. I've been here long enough that I'm totally comfortable saying this. So let's say my dad gave it to me, which he didn't, but let's role play that.
Sure.
I've been here long enough to know that if my gift didn't make room for me by now, somebody else would be pastoring this church. It would be a shipwreck. It would be something that was headed off the cliff by now.
Yeah.
Okay? So the idea that a man's gift will make room for him has to be a fundamental cornerstone to everything that we believe in ministry. And when you have someone that is feeling threatened by the lack of connections, they must come back to the point that you've raised today. The playing field is leveled by process. Time will reveal it all.
Yes, 100%.
You may be able to inherit a church from a grandfather, a father, an uncle, some familial connection. But if that's all it is and you're not God's man for that job, it will not materialize over time. And I think we've got to be so cautious. And again, this is not in the same sense that your spirit's not being critical of anybody's. I don't feel you're being critical of me when I would put I would put me in that category. But yet I think one of the aspects that we have to keep in mind here is also John the Baptist. You better be careful what you're coveting. Because it may look like a ministry that John the Baptist has is something to be desired until 3.5 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, that's good.
Right?
That is so good. Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, John's, he's gone from that intimate connection with setting up Jesus' ministry to who's John? He don't even have his own disciples anymore.
Yeah. Process, you said it best. Process is an equalizer. I mean I think that's an excellent point. And I could go down that same train of thought in that I have a son now, and he's 2 years old, and there's no telling what he'll want to do. Right now, he wants to be Bubba Harris. That's what he wants to be.
Yeah, we can call him Bishop Bubba.
Yeah, that's what he answers to. But okay, so. If the Lord would have it that he would feel the call of ministry, I think it's not just to give a balance to what my statement was. I think it's an honor to myself and the ministry if doors would open, because Dad spent 10, 15 years evangelizing. You don't know what God's going to do. Have a good track record. Had when I say success in ministry, I don't mean preaching at a conference. I just mean I think success is a relative term, but I mean respect and the honor of men. I think that's success in ministry, and that would open a door for my son. I think it's a compliment to a ministry.
Why not? Yes.
And so I'm not taking away. I don't want to take away from a man's ministry when I say that, but that is a question that many men have. But back to your point, the door can be open, but if he had not gone through process, no matter how great his dad is, or not, in this case, no matter how successful you are or not, if the son or grandson or anything else has not went through process, it reveals itself.
It does. This is the classic. The biblical principle is the gift will make room for you. But if you get in the room before your gift does, you won't survive in the room.
Yeah, that's 100%.
So you've got to make sure that you follow your gift into the room. So if there's anything, any maneuvering that gives you access to rooms that your gift is following you, then your tenure in that room process will remove you.
Well, and process keeps you from self-promotion. Process, once you've been through it, it keeps you from posturing. Process keeps you from posturing.
That's good.
Usually,
that's good.
Hold up.
There you go.
Hey,
There you
I
go.
can't hear
That's
it,
good
but
stuff.
it looks cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Process keeps you from posturing.
So good, man. Mm-hmm.
It does, because listen, like in business world, I would always try to go into a job when I was bidding it, and was not always in a rush. You know, they would ask you key questions. Hey, when can you start? Can you start next week? Well, you really didn't want to start next week, even if you wanted to start next week, because what they would say is there's blood in the water. They're going to beat your ears off on the amount of money and nickel and dime because they can tell you're hungry.
Yes.
The same thing goes for a pastor and a minister and anything else. They smell the blood in the water. They're not, when a guy's posturing himself because he hasn't went through process, they know. They can feed on, they can see it, they pick up on it. And that's something that a young guy doesn't even see. He's not even aware of it. And young is relative. Young in ministry or young in experience. Sure. Because I've seen guys who are 50 that did it. But they don't even see it. But there's blood in the water. You can tell. You're like, oh, okay. You know, he hasn't went through process. So if you haven't went through process, you're posturing at all, at every angle you can, you're posturing yourself.
Wow.
Fascinating.
Wow. This is so good. Man, have you got anything as we're wrapping up that you want to leave with someone that may feel like they're stuck in the process? Because that's part of it, you know. What would you say to them that feel like they're just trapped?
Yeah, you know what? I was talking to a young man even recently, and that was feeling like he was trapped.
Yeah,
and in the process, and really, just biblical principles are all important. Prayer, you got to seek the face of God, and we all say those things, but those are major things. Those are not things to overlook or downplay. But a lot of guys hear those often, and so they're thinking, "Okay, that's great. Now what?" You know,
right?
Well, you probably ought to repeat that. But I think in the process is the young preacher has to work on himself. A lot of the times in that area, and I say young again, I know that's relative, and I surely don't want to sound like the elder in the room.
You're elder compared to some of us. Let's be clear.
Sorry, Brother Randy. I don't know how old you are, but you look young.
So much younger than the rest of y'all.
Brother McKillop's only 32, so I'm his elder.
He is.
Apparently,
He's just a kid.
He's definitely not embraced the process of time.
Oh.
He's
there's a lot I want to say right now.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Come on.
Wow. That was beautifully played.
Well, praise God.
Musicians come.
So I think the young man, if he'll work on himself during that process and not keep comparing himself against everybody, and that's an evading statement, but if a man will work on himself during that process and cultivate his own ministry, find his own voice, I think we all tried somebody else. I think at one time, I know I did, but finding your own voice, finding yourself, and working on being ready. And when that day comes, you're going to be prepared and you're going to shine, because what was done in secret will be rewarded openly.
Ooh.
And
yes.
And I remember this. I'll say this, Bishop. I'm always throwing back on Bishop, but when we were young preachers, just young, I don't think I was married. Bishop would say, "Hey, I want 3 preachers to come up tonight, and you're going to toast an office. You're going to preach tonight." Well, man, that's powerful if you've been preaching. But man, I got up that night, and when I tell you it was bad, I mean it was bad. It was horrible. It was horrendous. And I promised myself after that, I said, "Lord, to God and everybody else, that will never happen again. And I will have a prepared, well put together message that I have been working on." And I promise you, I'm not saying that was a home run or anything, but it never happened again.
Yes.
Because I thought, you know what, if an opportunity like this comes, and I was just starting to preach, but if an opportunity like this comes again, I'm not going to let that. I want to be ready. I don't want to fall on my face there. And so I think that's in the process. If a young man, minister, however you deem it, would work on himself. And again, I don't claim to have an angle on it, just trying to work on me and still working on me.
That is,
I think in that process at the end.
wow, so good, because that really is the difference between posturing and positioning. You are wanting to make sure you are in position. That's not the same as posturing.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And when that day comes, you'll be ready
That's key.
to whatever
Yeah.
level
Yeah.
God's opened up.
Yeah. Man, I know this has helped people today. This has helped me. So we appreciate you coming on today and having this discussion. Thank you so much.
Tremendous. Yes, sir.
Hey, it's been an honor being on. I've enjoyed having a conversation with you all.